basically Ignite to the 2025 deep dive. If you've noticed, everything is going Copilot now, so by next year it'll be called Microsoft Copilot for Ignite app probably, rather than just Ignite, because now you have the apps, what is it, Copilot app, Outlook app, or no, Word, Excel app, when you go into Copilot and click on those. So yeah, I mean, it's just, they love their Copilot. I'm gonna try and say Clippy throughout the whole thing, and Brandon is gonna try and say Cortana through the whole thing and see how well we do. Brandon?
Yeah, just, who are you? You're doing introductions?
You're first.
Oh, I am first, aren't I? I'm Brandon Trocke, systems engineer here at High Point Networks, mainly focused on kind of the Intune side of Microsoft 365, Intune Defender, endpoint management.
Systems engineer / a bunch of other stuff, mostly all the Microsoft stuff. Been here for 13 years. I know overwhelming of everything of Microsoft. I know enough to help point in the right direction of our internal guys, or I know some of them. Anyone who tells you I know everything about Microsoft and Azure and M365, kick them off the door, because there's no way. I try and, mostly just kind of help these guys keep up to date and that sort of thing. So if you get a ticket with my name on it, you can tell dispatch, no, I don't want that guy. We had some pictures, so we had a nice little Copilot. The agenda items, we're going to go through some Microsoft Agent for 365, security compliance, endpoint device management, Azure infrastructure, Windows 365 and the new link that's out, Windows backup and M365 licensing updates. And then at the end, we'll have some questions, stuff like that. There is one slide at the end that I didn't put on here. It's tied into the license updates and we left it at the end and you'll see why. And then at Ignite, there's Brandon, me, and Kevin McComb, if you've probably worked with him around the area. Just agents. Basically used to be where everything was everywhere and some stuff was tied together. If you've been into O365, you know how messed up that portal is and on a consistent basis and how much they change it around. So agents used to be inside of the main portal. I think there's an actual portal now that they're coming out with for that. Each agent gets an enter ID for access control and audit tracking. So they do have a GUID and they will show up. Those agents will show up in your enter ID.
Yeah, but because they have an actual enter ID GUID, they're kind of treated as users. So you'll be able to kind of lock them down and control them with access control methods like conditional access.
Dashboard show what agents are doing, who they interact with, or who interacts with them. So you get some good reporting with it. So can you see? Good enough. Okay, squared line following up. I pre-practiced, so I was always how far back I want to go. Workman's comp, right? So it kind of gives you a nice reporting of what the agents are doing. There's ready-made agents for some of those. If you have a lot of stuff in SharePoint and you want to make an agent for one SharePoint page, you can do that and then publish that to the people that need it. One thing at High Point that I'm looking at trying to do is do our project managers have a SharePoint site with all the documents and what you guys are doing and those types of things. We could turn on the Copilot agent inside of that SharePoint site. The project managers would have the Copilot app, and then they would see the agent, and then any questions they could say, hey, what projects have we done for this person, for one of you guys, and come back and say, oh, we've done these. Okay, what are the documents tied to this, rather than trying to go search all through SharePoint and those types of things. They can actually get it a little bit easier. We actually have one that for our internal HR, I believe what they did is they set up the HR one and then you point it to your employee handbook and then they can ask questions and it'll parse through like employee handbook or our spending limit, our cost, or
Travel limits.
So, you say, hey, how much per diem do I get a day for this? Okay, there it is. What can I spend it on? How much is this and that sort of stuff. So we can ask all those questions inside of there. The agents for like the SharePoint and HR and Teams and stuff like that, those the end user can use without a paid Copilot. And you don't need to have a back end of those types of things at the monetary Azure subscription. You can do it straight through there. If you create a custom one, depending on what you're accessing, how it's accessing, you may have to put a subscription in first and then create the agent. And then that agent, if somebody uses it without a paid Copilot license, it charges you so much for those queries. And then if you have a Copilot license and you're using one of those that are custom made, those would require a subscription on the back end. Copilot Work IQ, it's basically their extra learning. It's kind of always been there. It's just they're kind of saying, Work IQ, we can put out another name and call something different like we normally do. Security and compliance. Basically, like Brandon was saying, the conditional access policies can be based off of the agents now. Purview, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Who's heard of Purview knows what it is. A couple of you. It is Microsoft's DLP. What you've probably heard is if you're going to turn on Copilot, you have to have Purview first. Yes and no. I kind of go with two options on this of saying, okay, if you're going to do Copilot doesn't make your data less secure. Okay, they're only going to get access to what they already have access to. What it does do is it gets rid of that security through obscurity, which is not security at all. We don't know that. So, I mean, it's just kind of, you're making it easier for people to find what they need, but they only have access to what they've already had access to or had access to. So, but Purview kind of extends that out and basically starts hardening stuff, can do some of the auto labeling. If you have somebody that's put something in Copilot that, probably was a PII or probably shouldn't have, or basically if you're sending out an email and watch those, if you have documents that have some of the PII in it, it'll automatically tag those with certain licensing. I would say E5 would be the highest, or what you would need to do for like somebody auto labeling and stuff like that. And we'll go through some of that when we get to some of the add-ons. Defender for endpoint, enforcing security across AWS, they can tie in across a bunch of stuff now. And then AI security dashboard for AI specific security posture. And I'll talk about that with our security for Copilot. They've kind of tried to manage everything into one portal rather than go into compliance, security, and all these other ones. You can go into Purview and it'll actually, you can do and see some of that stuff out there.
Some added features Microsoft announced within Intune and endpoint management this year is autopilot readiness checks. Beforehand, if you're looking at deploying autopilot, you just kind of have to turn it on and let it rip. With autopilot readiness checks, it's built into the, not autopilot, sorry, autopatch. Autopatch readiness checks in the autopatch page within Intune. I'll kind of run some checks on the devices that you already have enrolled into Intune, just making sure that your devices will be compatible with autopatch, and if there's any problems in the environment that might prevent autopatch from working correctly. Although not mentioned at Ignite, here's just a list of a lot of added features Microsoft. What?
Go back to autopatch.
Yeah.
1 second. Who is that hypothalamus here? Brandon did an awesome autopatch presentation. All those are out on YouTube now. So if you go to YouTube, go to High Point's thing, you can actually see the auto patch that he's talking about and any of the other stuff that you might have missed at HypoCon. Go ahead.
So this year, although not mentioned at Ignite, after Ignite, Microsoft added a bunch of features to the E5 and E3 SKUs. We'll touch on that more later, Eva. I think actually the slide has kind of more features. These are all features that Microsoft has added to their licenses in 2026. I'm not going to read this whole slide picture for you guys. The biggest difference here is the E3 and E5 SKUs. Microsoft added a lot of the Intune suite built into E3 and E5 versus having to add that Intune suite license separately. On top of all these additions, of course, comes price increase, which we'll touch later. It's not that secret.
Dudes are ready to let it start.
There's construction next door.
Here.
Do you guys have any questions with this picture, or you guys still read through it?
We'll reach out the slide deck too if you want it. You can talk to marketing and get that out. Azure and infrastructure. So not much has changed with that other than they've come up with the Azure management, Azure infrastructure management. Basically, and you guys can read it there. It pulls all of those into, again, they're trying to pull everything into one portal so that you can manage everything through one portal and not have to moving them from here to there and everything else. Actually doing some of those. Foundry, doing some faster networking GPU. Foundry is the DevOps piece of stuff.
Yeah, deploy data agents.
So if you're trying to deploy some agents, stuff like that, it was a little bit slower. They've actually tried to speed that up a little bit from what I understand. Windows 365. So AI-enabled cloud PCs. So who has heard of like the Copilot Plus machines, or you have vendors trying to tell you, hey, you need Copilot Plus AI machines with the neural processing unit yet? I know we've had some vendors that have come out with that of saying, oh, you need this Copilot AI machine. It does a lot of stuff through Teams where it can add some background stuff and stuff like that. The one that came up with the Copilot Plus is my brain's on.
Snapdragon.
No, what's the where it takes screenshots and records throughout your whole day?
Oh.
Replay or
Replay? Yeah.
Anyways, with Copilot Plus machine, it will automatically do those. If you domain join a machine, that'll stay on. If you enter join the machine, it's off by default. So you have to turn that on if you really want that. I've been playing with it a little bit. We got a couple Copilot Plus machines that, we enrolled them into our demo tenant, and we couldn't get the replay to work, and we're like, what's going on? Here we found out that the minute you tie it to a tenant, it shuts that off. So even Microsoft's going, well, it's good for people.
We don't want screenshots of corporate data going everywhere.
So again, that'll automatically get shut off. So if you really want it on, you certainly can. However, that's what you're dealing with. Cloud apps for frontline workers, and I'll let you kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of based on Windows 365, but instead of a whole entire desktop environment. Are you guys familiar with RDS remote apps at all? You guys use those? So with like RDS remote apps, you can deploy like Word, Excel, you RDP into your RDP server, and instead of a Windows desktop, you're just presented with a Microsoft Word window. This is basically that, just cloud-based.
They're working on a lot of migration over to that, whether it's Azure VMs, you got RDS up in the cloud, or you're doing Azure Virtual Desktop. They do have some ways to convert that over. Maybe I should go back. Everyone know what Windows 365 is? Maybe we should have started there. Sorry about that. Windows 365 is a virtual desktop that sits in Azure. It's an actual Windows 11 box. It's not like an RDS server with a server. So, and kind of like AVD is more that way, whereas this is its actual own Windows 11 OS. It's theirs, their only one. It's not shared across every single one. Their machine gets spun up for them and only them and turns off when they're done. And then you log in with using the new Windows app instead of RDP. So there's a little bit of difference. I'm looking into it at High Point. Like right now, if you work at High Point and you want to get any customer data, you have to be on your work laptop or work desktop in the office. If your laptop goes down, what do? Well, that's where this kind of comes into play where, hey, you can now open up the conditional access policy, allow just this app to come in from a non-High Point device so that they can still work remotely without having to go through a whole RDS server. One of the things that, I've found this also with is, RDS servers, they're kind of a pain. Some people are getting rid of those and just going to like something like this or the Azure Virtual Desktop. Reserved Cloud basically offers a temporarily reserved cloud PC where everything's pre-installed. It'll stay on, basically. It's not going to shut off, and it'll tie to whoever gets that next license so that they don't have to provision that desktop. Because when you assign a license, it automatically starts provisioning a desktop if they're in the provisioning policy within Azure. So what that'll do is you give them a license, it'll spin up the machine, get it all set up for them. And then it'll actually, when they log in, you can have your Intune policies push out all those desktop items. So if you're doing autopilot, think of autopilot. How long does it take to get through the whole autopilot license and then all the Intune stuff? So once they're through all of that, it's up and running. So is this going to be ready in 15 minutes per person? No. It's a half hour, provisioning time about. Again, it depends on how many you're doing at a time. If you're doing 5,000 at a time, it's going to take a while. And then global connectivity, regional hosts, Microsoft hosted network. Basically what they're saying is those Windows desktops are straight directly connected to Microsoft. They're not having to go out of the internet, come back in. They can tie straight to those data centers at that point. So like their teams and stuff like that is right out of there.
You touched on the Reserve Cloud PC more. It's made for, it's kind of a different tier of Windows 365. It's made for kind of disaster recovery type scenarios. Let's say you get ransomware on your, corporate laptops or whatever. It's kind of an IT approved ready machine sitting there in the background that is just ready to spin up in the case of a disaster scenario where you can still get your employees back to work.
Because we've had some compromises where their machine was compromised, and obviously once you start a compromise like that, they, a lot of times the forensic companies will say, hey, you cannot turn any of these on, you cannot use them, and you can't wipe them until we know what's going on and figure out what forensics we want pulled off those devices. So we had one where they wanted every single device in the building, they scanned on it because they couldn't figure out what was going on. It was like 200 devices. So if you've got 200 people and you don't have an RDS server and you need to get them back and running, this is one of those things that can do, not 200, but even like 5 to 20 or whatever. So that's where this is nice and helpful, where they can still keep working and you're just running off those. Now those are a per month cost. It's not a per run cost. And it depends, the cost depends really on what size machine that you want. Okay. You can, again, people always say, well, I need 32 gig of RAM and a 12 core and, 2 terabyte drive and this graphics card and I need all this other, they really don't. I mean, yeah, sometimes when you add stuff and they're doing stuff, yes, they need some more of that power, But with this being on the back end and right at Microsoft, yeah, it's not gonna be a beefy machine. You're not gonna run AutoCAD on this. You're not gonna run some of those types of stuff on it. It's gonna be like some web-based stuff and your Word docs and stuff like that.
Even if you have a deep enough pocket.
You can buy ones with it.
Yeah, it's one of the bigger differences between AVD and Windows 365. Windows 365 is a license within the Microsoft 365 portal, and it's just a standard. The license go off of hardware, so but I think the bare minimum one is 4 gigs of RAM, 2 core, and then like a 32 gig drive. Versus AVDs, you can kind of add and remove resources to those virtual desktops at will. Windows 365 is kind of a static hardware level based on the license per user.
And then with this, you two different ways to license this. You buy one person a license, you give it to them, and they're good to go. There are some for their frontline Windows 365 where you can basically you get like a pool of them. And so it's really good with like companies where you've got 3 different shifts and you've got, you know, so many people working here, then so many people working here, so many people working here. Works good for that where you just get a pool when the one logs out, the other one logs in, and you kind of have that, you know, so you're not dealing with giving everyone a license if you've got some of those in the background type thing.
That's Windows 365 shared mode. So basically it's instead of each user getting a dedicated session, their user logs in, they get their own kind of session, they log out and everything just disappears and the next person logs in, they get the, you know, IT ready state right away.
Windows Link, and no, it's not a box to play the old video game Link. Apologize. How many have had to deal with thin clients and RDS and all that fun stuff? I'm going to tell you right now, this is basically a thin client. However, it's really nice. There's support right out of the box for a bunch of stuff, tending, branding, all of those things, bare metal, and then extended partner ecosystem. They're right now very hard to come by right now. There's only like, I don't know how many vendors that you can actually buy this from. So it is one of those things that, you know, we kind of want to deal with. The old Wise ones, you know, you used to be able to boot them up. There was a web browser, there was all this other stuff. You had to manage it, do all the updates, all this stuff. What happened? I'll let you explain what happens after you buy it and how it gets added in.
Yeah, so Microsoft Link, once you buy it, automatically gets added to your Intune portal. And then from there, it's if you guys ever used Autopilot or know how Autopilot works, you plug it, get the device, plug it in, user enters their credentials, and it just pulls the Autopilot out of box provisioning process as soon as they enter their credentials, and then presented with their Windows 365 or AVD machine. Microsoft basically toasts it as a super secure portal to Windows 365. Like Watts said, it's, you know, a super secure thin client, but.
And basically they are working in Windows 365. There is no data stored on the device. It is literally just a device. They can't, you know, oh, I'll copy and paste and bring it back to, you know, those types of things. Did I tell you? Yeah, it's sad, right? When we started. Just talked to them and told them.
I think that's,
it was.
sounds like the roto's it.
Yeah. They're really cool. They've got, you know, some nice features of it. There's no management of it. It's that of it. There's that stuff.
Count on the wall. This one I'm going to read from the slide deck here. Just make sure I get the wording right for you guys. Microsoft also now is kind of working on what they call the Windows Resiliency Initiative. Microsoft Intune will serve as a unified, scalable management platform for recovery tools, basically meaning that when you enabling remote control of Windows recovery environment on Intune managed clients, it allows you to select the appropriate recovery tools and coordinate endpoint recovery strategies. Intune will support with this, and you can actually start sending recovery scripts and recovery actions directly to devices. point-in-time restore. A lot of this is mainly focused on Windows 365 machines, but it is a native feature within Windows 11. This helps recover the device or group of devices. It offers comprehensive rollback within minutes to the exact state of the system before a problem emerged, restoring the OS apps, settings, and local files. So in the case of ransomware, assuming it wasn't a time bomb ransomware where the ransom is already on the device, you can say, all right, restore the device to 7 a.m. before it got encrypted and everything, was back to where it needs to be.
We have not tested this.
Nope, this is full.
With Microsoft, I always say should. It should revert it back to whatever, depending on. Because it's pulling the stuff from the cloud. It doesn't care what's on the machine anymore. It's almost like it's going to wipe the machine and reboot.
Yep. So cloud backup or cloud rebuild. Cloud rebuild will reinstall a completely new Windows 11 OS with the appropriate drivers for that specific device. Basically, meaning the device becomes reliable and as soon as you start adding Intune, Windows backup, and OneDrive, that device will now kind of come back as what the user is used to. So with Windows backup and restore, it's an option that you can enable within Intune. You guys don't need any additional licenses for it. It's included with Intune P1. What that's going to do is it's going to back up users, basically their visual preferences, their desktop wallpaper, their shortcuts that they have on the start menu, their color theme, everything that the user does of the computer to make it theirs. And once that's backed up and you give them a new device, assuming you guys are backing up files with OneDrive files on demand, if a user gets a new device, once they sign into the device and it goes through the autopilot provisioning, they'll be able to select a restore point from their previous device. And then once they log into the device, it'll be kind of like they never got a new computer. Everything is kind of exactly the same as what they had for the new one. So now that was a big gripe with getting new devices. You have to redo everything on the device. Even though your files and everything might still be there, you still have to reconfigure all your user preferences.
What about Google Chrome? Does it move all that? Because I store all my passwords in Google Chrome.
I hope you don't.
I mean, that's where I put mine. So I can log back into Google.
Yep. And with Intune, you should be you should be managing Chrome and preventing that. But
so we can prevent people using a personal login into Chrome.
Yes.
Oh. Security Copilot now included with M365E5. Security Copilot is kind of one of those, again, it's one portal for everything that you can do. So if you have an incident, you can use the one portal, take that incident, and Copilot will help you pull all that information together, give you recommendations and those types of things straight off of there. I'll let Brandon tell you how that works with licensing.
Yeah, the Security Copilot if you guys have any of you guys ever quoted it out or went into Azure and looked the Azure calculator and looked at it, it's extremely expensive. Microsoft announced that they're starting to include Security Copilot within Microsoft 365 E5 license with a few caveats. The biggest thing is it's a 1-to-4 ratio for the licenses and security compute units. So if you have 100 user license assigned or 100 users assigned with E5, you're going to get 40 what they call security compute units every single month. That's a use it or lose it type of measurement, and I don't have a great explanation on how it's being, or not how it's being used, but how much you'd expect to go through those security compute units. Basically, kind of average what we've seen if you ask Copilot for a prompt, the Security Copilot for a prompt, you're probably going to go through about 3 security compute units for that. Obviously, there's reporting and everything that you can view for that. Same thing goes, so it scales up no matter how many licenses you have. So if you have 1,000 E5 licenses, you get 400 security compute units a month.
So basically, if you want to try it out and you assign one M365E5, you're not going to get Security Copilot. there's not enough run capacity on the back end because you're only going to get
Wait, one. If you have one EFI, 0.4
Yeah.
security compute units.
0.25.
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
You need to take on coverage. Yeah. So again, we're starting to play with it a little bit more at High Point now that we have it with our licensing. So we'll know more as time goes on with that. Brandon will talk on the next slide, some of the Microsoft Defender purview suites for Microsoft Business Premium. How many of you have Business Premium? If you're in Business Standard still, let's look at getting you to Business Premium. Or look at if you're just doing, Business Basic or Business Standard, maybe we want to start looking at doing frontline licensing. It's cheaper and they don't need it. So when your yearly renewal time comes up, let's maybe have a conversation of, do we need to look at some of this other stuff? Copilot Business. So all of you that raise your hands, Copilot Premium, and if you have bought Copilot or Copilot on anything business related, you paid your $30 for it. Now it is $20 to add to a business license or add the business license. So here's what you need to do to get it to 20. You need to wait till the end of the yearly, and then when it renews, you need to renew it all as Copilot Business. Okay? So you're stuck with the $30 until that's done. You can add a $20 prorated if you need an extra license to add that. So there are some things inside of there. Again, they took Business Premium and said, okay, or Business and said, okay, what can we give it? Let's give them Copilot Business. It's the same Copilot that you paid the $30 for. It's no different. You're not losing anything or anything like that. It is the exact same.
Do you still get agent?
It is literally the exact same.
They just made it $10 cheaper for SMBs.
Copilot Chat. Heard of this lately? How many have logged into portaloffice.com and what did it go to? Copilot. Why I said everything is labeled Copilot now. Your apps for your Word and Outlook's all down at the bottom. I hate it, but that's what it is. That started with the Copilot Chat. So basically all of your users now have access to Copilot Chat. Okay, so what they put into Copilot Chat, no, I don't bring them. Do you bring up, has everybody installed the Copilot app, desktop app? So you kind of know what that is and stuff like that, race your agents and all those types of things. As long as you work through there and you are uploading, like let's say you want to summarize a Word document. You have Copilot, hey Copilot, you're going to the Word doc and you're telling Copilot summarize this thing. You can do it right inside the Word now. In order to do Copilot Chat through for the free and have it summarize a document, you have to add that document into the Copilot window and say, off of this document, tell me what, is the summary or whatever. So it's a little bit different. It doesn't have as deep reach into it. And by the time that this comes out, they probably will change that too. And it will have all over the place and Copilot, who knows. So Copilot Chat is already there. It does keep as long as you're using it, it keeps your data inside. It's not like Bing or any of that stuff where if you went out and did that or ChatGPT, it stays in their stuff. This actually stays inside of your tenant. We can do some training on this for Copilot. Basically, it's about 45 minutes to an hour training where I go through and I start with Copilot Chat. Hey, this is what all your people can do for free. I talk about Business Premium or Teams Premium to talk about what features are inside of that and then what you're going to get with Copilot Pay so that you kind of know what's going on inside of it. So if you have some questions on this, then we can help you with that. Just let your account manager know.
Well, Business Premium editions. Some of you guys have Business Premium, and a lot of times you get Business Premium. We move you guys to Defender if you guys are looking for a antivirus Defender for business. There's a lot of differences between Defender for Business P1 and P2, and a lot of people are kind of seeing that if they, get compromised, like, oh, why can't I do, X, Y, Z? Like, oh, you need Defender for Business P or Defender for Endpoint P2. What Microsoft did for SMB customers is now they have the Microsoft Defender Suite for Business Premium, and then the Microsoft Purview Suite for Business Premium. Basically, as you can see here, it's just adding a lot of extra licenses to Business Premium for $10 instead of the $28.20 if you were to add everything separately. For Purview, same thing. Add a bunch of different licenses, a lot of E5 license stuff to Business Premium for $10. If you add both of them, or if you want to take advantage of both of them, that price goes down to $15 for everything instead of $20.
So we think this a lot with like compliance. You get some compliance that comes through and say, hey, you need to have DLP set up, or you need to be able to do an e-discovery, or some of those types of things, or you need to go into the cloud app. So we had to before say, okay, well, you need to move off of Business Premium and go to M365 E5. So slide, yeah. So basically with that, because Business Premium is 22, I'll say around 22. And then you add the 15 is 37. So you're saving $20. And you're kind of, what you're losing inside of that is you're losing your Power BI Pro, which I don't think 90% of the people use that, maybe 99. I think we've only got 4 people that actually do a lot with PowerPoint. Or not PowerPoint, Power BI. And then you're losing out on some phone system stuff. And for most people, you've already got phone systems, you don't need to have that in. So instead of adding, all that extra in, you can save the $20 and just lose those couple of things that would be there. However, all that compliance stuff is there.
See additional security and compliance a lot more obtainable for SMBs instead of having to jump up to the enterprise level SKUs.
This is the one that I said, and I'm letting Brandon send this one out.
Yeah, more reason to go Business Premium. It hasn't changed. This is Microsoft's new MSRP pricing. Obviously, you guys may see different prices. You may not. Everything's increased.
And this, if it's October of this year, you're not going to be paid unless you're paying month to month with annual commitment. So I'll talk with Stoneman. We may need to get that out for next week for Silicon so that people understand that. Yeah, they're all going up a little bit. Blame it on the tariffs. What? I don't care. It's Microsoft, and I think in the 12 years, it's only raised 3 times.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes from their additional, especially the E3 and E5 price increase. They added a lot of features to those SKUs, and for an extra, $3 for all the additional Intune Suite features. It's fairly reasonable. So the Intune Suite was a $15 per user per month license. So you get a lot of features in there for $3 extra if you're using eSKUs.
Questions for Brandon?
Questions for kiddos.
We'll be around too. The food is here. So, I mean, if nobody has any questions, we can certainly start on food. We'll be around. You can ask us some questions, throughout the whatever, and go from there. Does anybody have any questions off the top of their head?
I think the number one takeaway for everybody is now that you've seen it, you all know it, you're all very comfortable with it, and you're not confused about any of it, right? So please make sure that you know who your account manager is and call on them when you need help so that we can bring these guys in and have one-on-one conversation with you. Because your environment's going to be a little bit different than everybody else, and we kind of went through it at a general base there. So take advantage of it. We're trying to get better on it. We want to be jack of all and master of all. But with Microsoft, that's almost impossible. We're a long way into it. We're deep into it. Let's have a conversation, make sure we're doing the right thing for you. Also, when it's time for you to renew your subscriptions, that may be a great time to have that conversation too, simply because there might be better ways for us to license you, if you will. So take advantage of that.
Yeah. And that way we can actually see what you're doing and stuff like that. I mean, if you're paying for some of these and you don't need them, you know, or you're not using some of the features, let's see what we can go down to or, you know, add on. I'm gonna be a little selfish with that. It's more for our side on usage because we get rated on how much you guys are using all of your products with inside. So if you're not using half of them, then, you know, let's maybe look at that and see if there's a cheaper way that you guys can do that rather than that. And then the last shameless plug that I'm gonna do is, you're probably, some of you might have gotten an email from an Adam
Lewandowski,
there you go, thank you. About,
good Irish.
yes, about, some security scanning, stuff like that. That is basically us doing a security scan on your Enter environments. So when you get that, if you wanna hook up with him and your account manager, I can certainly go through all the details of that as well. Microsoft turns stuff on and I don't like it because some of the stuff they turn on is bad. And this helps find all those things that, you know, recommended to turn off.
Give us a call. We've got a campaign built around this right now, and this is kind of a high priority of ours. So you're not bugging us. If you have questions on it, call your account.
We want to make sure that you don't get compromised to make us visitor.
Right.
All of it. Well, I mean, I will help out with compromises. I do all of them, both of them. Some of them take 2 weeks, 24/7. I don't mind it, but I know that you guys don't want it.
That is your job, that compromise guy.
Compromise. That was one of the other factors you have. Okay, with enough talking, food's out here.
And out, we got everything sitting in a buffet. Come back in, sit here, grab some drinks. Again, bathrooms right there. Help yourself.
But you got 10 minutes to eat, and then we're picking you up.